Welcome to the Steven Semino Says Boom Show, issue number 81.
Boom.
Oh.
Hey everyone, welcome to Pop XP. And before the show starts, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload awesome new content. And don't forget, if you can, make sure to share our stream on all your social media outlets. We appreciate it, and thanks for helping us grow the Pop XP channel.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Steven Semino Says Boom Show, issue number 81. And we got a guest that was always tough to get, but we finally reeled her in. But before we get into that, now, what's going on, brother? It's good to see you guys.
Good to see you, gentlemen, and everyone. It's great to see you out there in YouTube land and on X. And make sure to look below, click that subscribe button, and smash that bell to get notifications when we go live like we are right now, or when we're uploading some amazing content. And, you know, it's taken a while. You're an excellent hunter there, John. You know, an elusive guest is in our midst tonight. So I'm pretty excited. Been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, and we're going to get some good stories about the bullpen during the good old days. And Steve, we got my boy Steve needs his pre-workout meal. I know he's a little tired, but Steve has been at San Diego Comic-Con with our guy, Jerry Conway. I couldn't be there because I had to be with Roy throwing the first pitch at a minor league baseball game, and he threw a strike. It was unbelievable. The guy, and I have to admit, the autographs, the fanfare was incredible. We were also out there with Chad Bowers, and it was great to have him too. He's worked with Rob Liefeld and all that stuff. But Steve, tell us a little scoop about San Diego. How did it all go for you, brother?
San Diego was sort of an odd show. Saturday was quite nice. It wasn't too bad. And then Sunday, I think they allowed the entire planet to go to the show. It was completely and utterly, it's been years since I've seen it that packed. Of course, the big news, Robert Downey Jr. and Dr. Doom. Also other big news, something must be going on with Mr. Hyde, Cobra and Hyde, because those Journey into Mystery issues were in demand. And also, down on the dealer's floor, everyone was looking for Fantastic Four 49. 49, not 48.
Really?
49, the first cover appearance of Galactus. So it's good to see a little bit of heat there on the dealer's floor. But yeah, I was only there for 2 days. But yeah, it was nice to see a lot of friends. And of course, hanging out and going to see Jerry Conway are always a thrill. I mean, a major, major, major thrill. And I wanted to make sure that I got a good video and was able to put it up on Facebook.
I want people out there to know, since Jerry's a part of our team, we always talk Roy Thomas and we talk now Jerry Conway because he's part of the family. And I have to admit, a lot of my guys, our guys, part of our family, they all went up to him during the course of the days. But you did that great video, Steve. I mean, it really was. It was awesome. Yeah, I loved how you put Man Wolf in there. And you the one thing Jerry and Roy did so good, obviously Man Wolf, but Roy giving them the moon rocks. For some reason, me and you got crazy with the moon rocks. Even as a kid, I thought that was so
but it's okay. I gave credit where it's due. I said that John Semino is probably more of a Man Wolf fan than me, which is pretty amazing because I didn't run around with a little gem.
Oh.
So I tip my hat to you on that. So, believe you me, I push you out there.
Yeah. And Steve, one more thing. Didn't it graft itself to his skin? Remember that? It grafted to his skin.
Yes, because Spidey had to actually rip it off his neck.
And he didn't mean to, but like, yeah, he ripped it up. That was so good. Mark of the Man-Wolf, man. It's funny. That's a character me and you would just got crazy for some reason. And it's like, that's not a common character, but.
And that's why I wanted to bring it up in the interview and also mention his run on Thor.
Yeah.
Because we know that he's Mr. Punisher, but I want other people to be aware of the breadth of his career.
What was that Thor when he fights Hercules? Was that 222? When him and Hercules fight?
It's in that range.
Yes.
It's not 222, but it's in that range.
Yes, but it is incredible. That is such a great, and the art, John Buscema, unbelievable. And Niall, how was your weekend, brother? How's it going with you?
Oh, it's going great, man. We've got a bunch of stuff. I got so many videos I have to like edit and post up from San Diego that Tucci was sending me. So we've got some I think 3 or 4 panels that we recorded over there that are going to be going up on the channel. So I edited up 2 of them today. They're going to upload 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon tomorrow. And then at the end of the week, I'm going to upload the other 2.
I saw that too. And I talked to Polito a lot too. Once again, Steve, your video with Polito was great. It was awesome. And okay, just so you know, we're going to be having our Tucson, Arizona show that next month. And it's going to be with Roy Thomas, and Polito's going to be there. Hopefully, Steve will be back from his trip to see back home. But we're going to be promoting that show. And what's great about it is it's not just Wolverine's 50th. It's not just Iron Fist's 50th. I don't know if you guys know this, but it's Lady Death's 30th and Brian Polito's 50-year anniversary of collecting comics. That guy's the best. I love how
I love Polito. He's awesome.
Yeah, so everyone does. Everyone does.
So me and Brian have
I've never heard a detractor.
Yeah, and me and Brian have been talking on how we're going to do the VIP. So that's great. That's the news. But let's talk about our guest today. Okay, once again, this guest was one of the hardest guests for me to get. This goes back like 2 years. I've been trying to get her. I mean, she would maybe do it. I would even have Roy throw in his 2 cents. Maybe she'd do it. She would come. Maybe it was like fly fishing. Zzz, zzz, zzz. And it was just very hard. But somehow I reeled her, and I think maybe it was because we had Robin Green, maybe because she kind of slid in there, maybe gave her a little bit because she's a little bit shy, but she's wonderful. And she was in there during the greatest time at Marvel. I mean, I can't say enough. Steve, what do you have to say about our guest today?
Well, again, I think that this podcast, what we're having today is what it's all about. We are going to get some information, of course, first-hand account information from that golden era of Marvel's Bullpen.
Oh.
Now, we all know the basics of stuff that's been written, but it's those small nuggets of information that we get where someone comes out and we're like, wow, we've never heard that before. That's what this podcast is all about. So that's why it is so, I'm very honored. And it's like, wow, I actually have to pinch myself right now that we're going to be having Gene Thomas here on the show, because I just love hearing those first-hand accounts of stuff that happened that no one else knows, and we need to get it out there into the ether.
Right, and from their perspective, it's like that's what makes it great. So now, without any further ado, why don't you introduce the princess?
Yeah, so everyone, please welcome Miss Gene Thomas.
Gene, it is a pleasure to have you here, and thank you. I know you make some sacrifices to come here, but Steve is correct. You may be a little shy, and Robin doesn't get it. Robin Green didn't get it. Sometimes you gal Fridays, you don't get it. Your perspective on even these little things are so important to the geeks like us and the geeks out there that they just love that. And you have that firsthand knowledge. Like when Robin Green called up Stan and said she's not coming back. And like how she told us, Stan's like, what? That's the stuff that we love because it's firsthand knowledge. And you have that. And you coming in there, obviously being Roy Thomas's first wife, coming in there. So before we get into your time at Marvel, let's talk about little Gene Thomas and how she got in, and then eventually meeting Roy and then coming to Marvel. So why don't you tell us your origins, Gene?
Well, okay. I was not a superhero fan. As a child, I liked Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
Loved Mad Magazine, and Prince Valiant in the Sunday pages. Loved Prince Valiant, the beautiful artwork.
Oh.
And well, I don't know. I mean, it's a little unusual to say this now. Maybe it's like a little politically incorrect. But, you know, Roy was a high school teacher when I was in high school.
Right.
Roy was a teacher where I was in high school. And then suddenly, like years later, when I was in college, we went out, and I ended up coming to New York.
Well, let me ask you the question, and let me ask this: that how you remembered Roy being your teacher prior, like I know now you're in college. How did you guys meet up there then in college?
I you know, to tell you the truth, I absolutely cannot pinpoint that date. But I can pinpoint remembering visiting New York. I had already visited New York with a college friend and really loved New York. And then when I had an invitation to come to New York again, I hopped on it because I really liked New York.
Okay, so that's something I didn't know. So Roy was already in New York?
Yes,
at the time?
yes. And then somehow was appearing at a comics convention in St. Louis, where I was in between semesters of college.
Oh, okay. Now, did you remember him as your teacher? Like,
yes.
you know?
Yeah.
Did he remember too? Did you like? He was like,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And shall we just say, this probably was a difficulty that multiplied over the years.
Well, once again, you can tell us anything. But okay, so you meet Roy, and then Roy.
Basically, I married into the superhero business.
No, right, of course. Of course. But hey, I would have done it too, believe me. And I'm like, you know, I say like, and you didn't want to, you didn't expect to do it, but I would have done it too.
I didn't, yes. And very shortly after moving to New York, and very shortly after settling in on the Upper East Side, I got, I don't want to say dragooned, but strongly encouraged to come into the office to help out, because there seemed to be a shortage of support people. Okay,
so you're with Roy now in New York,
and we're married.
And you're married.
And he wanted somebody to come in and help in the office, and
so
his eye fell on me. And
yeah, so
said, why not? You know, hey, you know, it was a job in New York, so let's give it a try.
And before we go on, I just want to point out, Jeannie still lives in New York, and Roy went back to rural America. And what's funny is I said to Roy, I was like, it's funny. You went out there to be to be with Roy, and now you're still there. You've been there all these years later.
I know. I've always said I'm hiding in plain sight. I always stayed in New York. Even after I left comics entirely and went to work for other kinds of magazines, and then completely into another field of do-gooding, a lot of do-gooding in the world. I always stayed in New York, and I always lived in Manhattan. I always kept the apartment in Manhattan. And for a while, literally, I was within blocks of Marvel's office when they were on Park Avenue South, and I used to see Jim Shooter playing pickup basketball at one of the schoolyards in my neighborhood.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, okay, Jeannie. I would love to know your first day walking in the office. What do you see? Do you remember? How?
Well, it was unlike any other office I had worked in. Because before that, my office experience had been, I worked in a very buttoned up law firm in St. Louis. A very white shoe buttoned up law firm. So to walk in expecting an office job, and there's stuff being thrown over the partitions, and you know, people are wearing casual clothes. I mean, every day was casual Friday. Monday through Friday was casual. And here it was on Madison Avenue, where you would have expected a certain level of sophistication. Madison Avenue being the home of the ultimate advertising of its era.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you walk into this office, not quite shabby, but pictures, cartoons all over the wall, and casual atmosphere.
Oh.
And somebody's wearing sandals, no socks, and just a complete change from a buttoned-up office in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah.
So
now, do you remember some of the people that were there at that time?
Absolutely. Okay, so I was assigned. So being the most junior person, I was sitting at a little rickety, either typewriter table or card table with a little manual Smith Corona portable typewriter.
Okay.
Then Robin Green had the big desk that was sort of the command post.
Okay.
And then I think Linda Fite was in a slightly different area doing, I think, mainly correspondence. I think somebody was actually titled corresponding secretary. And then at one point, I was just listed in the Marvel yearbook as adorable assistant because I was kind of a Jill of all trades. But it's fun. Yeah. Okay. Now, the one thing I have to say is I never thought 50 years later a bad haircut with a nail scissors would come back and haunt me. And I wish somebody would burn that picture. Because I had a bad habit when I was 20 years old of cutting my hair with a nail scissors, thinking, let me do that. Well, obviously, that photo will live in infamy. So,
infamy.
Okay, but when Robin, so I did listen to Robin's, and so that answered the question as to why Robin's desk suddenly opened up, and I got moved over there because she just walked out and didn't come back.
Yes, yeah. This is great. This is how you get the other perspective.
This is how
awesome.
you get the other perspective, and this is how you climb the corporate ladder. Somebody else walks out to go to a rock show with her boyfriend. I mean, so I graduated from the little rickety card table to the big desk with the bank of phones. But I have to tell you, I know that most of the time people talk about answering Stan's mail, which we did, which I think everyone did to a certain degree. I perfected Stan's handwriting to put on postcards. I will always assure everyone now I never signed a check, but I did sign postcards.
Oh.
Sent in reply to fans. But not only did we answer mail, but there was a tremendous volume of paper flying around. I mean, every stage of comics production was manual, and it involved those big boards. I mean, from the conventions and the size of the original artwork. Well, those pieces of artwork had to be either packaged and sent or hand delivered at least 3 or 4 different times, go through 3 or 4 different hands. And when you consider that each and every month there was a title or 2 added, I mean, so the volume just kept growing and growing. And poor Saul Brodsky, the production manager, I don't know how he did it with just a corkboard and push pins, because there was no Excel spreadsheet, there was no smart whiteboard. I mean, this was all done with seeing things on a corkboard with push pins.
Wow.
And every step along the way, it had to be forwarded to the next creative. So obviously there was an idea, there was a writer who created a plot, and then it went to an artist, and then that's where the pencils were produced. Then the pencils came back to be written. Then the pencils had to go out to an inker, then from an inker to a letterer, and then all that had to come back and be photostated. And an important person in this whole production process was Stu the Stat Man, because every one of those single boards had to be photostatted down to more manageable 8.5 by 11s so they could go to the colorist.
Yeah.
And that's what the colorist worked on. The photos, these small, more paper size.
Yeah.
And then at some point, and then as a final thing, all of this had to be packaged up and either messengered or sent to the Comics Code. Now, the Comics Code was located in Manhattan, so it was probably an easier thing to messenger it, probably due to the fact that things were on certain deadlines and in certain cycles, they probably even wanted things batched together. So probably not every single issue had to go individually. But you get the idea that there was an enormous amount of paperwork going on. So, of course you needed people. Of course you needed hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then just, I don't know, randomly in there, proofread a certain step along the way. Because I know that that's where I really learned to proofread, was to proofread on the comics.
Wow. So, okay, so all that paper's coming through and all that
coming in and out, and then also and then each creative person, as they finished their task, submitted a voucher, and those vouchers had to be held rather confidentially, so they couldn't always just clip a voucher to a batch of work and just ship it in, not knowing who was going to open it. So in a lot of cases, the person either brought in the work with the voucher, or depending on how fast they wanted the voucher processed, you get the idea. I didn't send it in, made sure that it was hand carried in and delivered to the appropriate person. And then even the accounting was all done manually. And these vouchers were filled out individually by each person, with the number of pages they did and the page rate for the grand total, etc. And I guess I'm not telling tales out of school. I mean, these page rates were meant to be confidential.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it couldn't just be handed to anyone. It had to be handed to someone who would then take it directly to accounting, or Stan would sign off on it, and then it would go to accounting. So you get the idea that there was just a lot of stuff going in, cycling in and out of that small premises. I mean, it was like as much air traffic as JFK.
Go ahead.
So like the artist, anyone that was working actually filled out almost like their timesheet, right? Just everything that they've done, and that gets submitted on the voucher. So they would actually send that in with their work.
Or bring it in. Yes. But and generally people would voucher per job, like as the job was completed. So each job had a voucher that had to be filled out with it, and that was a piece of paper. That wasn't.
That's cool. I didn't know that
electronically.
That
was
is really
all
cool.
done on like a little library-sized card.
Yeah.
Wow. Before I give it to Steve, who oversaw that though? Like, who was the person who had to make sure they were honest about what was on that voucher? Was that Saul?
I would say that was Saul Brodsky.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say that was Saul Brodsky. And of course, that's why a lot of the work had to come into the office before it could be forwarded to the next stage.
Yeah.
You couldn't just decide, I'm going to send it on to the inker, because you wanted to get the pencils and make sure that that was all done appropriately, or maybe the writer had to get a hold of the pencils. So you couldn't have somebody just on their own deciding, I'm going to send it to Artie Simic, the letterer.
Yeah.
There was a whole process on how it was signed off on, and was this work appropriate, etc. And then at the end of the process, after the Comics Code reviewed it, I mean, there was a certain amount that was sent back to the office, and that's where the Bullpen artists sometimes did some revisions.
Right.
And I would say mainly for them, so the bullpen artists would say, maybe on request of the Comics Code, raise the necklines. And then on the other hand, if they were updating material that was going to be in a reprint issue, there was a lot of reprints, I think, of Millie the Models and the old romance stories, but all of those fashions had to be updated because there was a big shift in the way people dressed between 1963 and 1968 or 1970.
Yeah.
So on one hand, at the behest of the Comics Code, they were raising necklines, and then to accommodate fashions of the late 60s and early 70s, they were raising skirt line, they were raising hems, or adding bell bottoms. And of course, all these clean-shaven, preppy-looking guys had mustaches and sideburns added. And girls had long hair added, where they had like little short poodle cuts or something like that. So it was funny. I mean, there was just a lot of miscellaneous work going on too.
Go ahead, Steve.
I want to go back a little bit because I'm always interested in when someone's getting involved in a relationship and someone says they're working in comics, there's usually one or two results of that. And when I first started talking to women many years ago and said that I worked in comics, I would say, where are you going? So I'm sort of curious, when Roy comes back and sees you and, you know, you have a relationship and you're going to be moving forward and you say, I'm going to marry this man. How did he explain what he was doing and what he thought, where did he think he was going? Because obviously when couples get together, you know, there's going to be some major conversations like, where are you going? Or, oh, I've got to go to New York. And if you could put a date, like a time period of a date of when this occurred, because you know, that's a big decision for you to get married to someone who's working in comics and not a teacher anymore.
I know. Should I have thought about it more? Should I have thought about it more? We can't undo. We cannot go back in a time machine 50-something years. So who knows? It sounded like a good idea at the time. It sounded like a good idea at the time. What can I say? And a lot of it was very interesting. I mean, I met so many interesting people.
Yeah.
And the ambiance was interesting. And I know at different points you've referenced different famous people who liked Marvel or who liked comics. So yes, I mean, I know that the office was visited by famous people. And I know at one point, Stan had some kind of script in progress with the French director Alain Resnais, and Roy and I had dinner with Resnais and his then significant other. And so it was interesting, and you know, interesting that you know, other pop figures liked the comics.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm curious about is, when Roy was explaining to you what he actually did as a job, what did he say? Did he say, you know, I'm a comic writer?
I don't think he explained it. He just did it and expected me to follow along. Catch on. You're a smart girl. Catch on.
So
keep up. Am I saying something nasty? I'm not saying anything nasty.
No, I think
no. It's just that, you know, obviously, the only reason I bring that up is because when I met my ex-wife many years ago, and she worked in the fabric business, and you know, she'd never met anyone like me before, and I said, "Oh, I sell comics," and her family, everyone was like, "So you don't work then?" You know, so it was like, you know, it was like a culture shock. And I remember it was like a huge, big thing in there because everyone kept asking me, like, so what do you do? Do you like draw, you know, read comics all day? So it's just.
Well, I very quickly saw it. I very quickly saw what the process was, that he was writing, spending a lot of time writing, going into the office a certain amount of time, editing, bossing people around, assigning people, talking to Stan. And to tell you the truth, to a certain extent, as one of the young women in the office, I sort of had my own little bailiwick. So it might have, for a while, it may have been processing the no prizes and postcard fan mail.
Yeah.
But for a long time, it was traffic, air traffic control for all this artwork. And then later in the process, I got more into my own writing.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
And one of the reasons I am wearing this is Spidey Super Stories was in fact my favorite project.
Right.
Now, true comics fans, of course, don't like Spidey Super Stories because it's very simplistic and it was obviously aimed at a very elementary audience. But I enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed working with Children's Television Workshop in
the Electric Company.
Marvel.
The Electric Company.
Yeah, the Electric Company. And because I was kind of adjacent, well, the Electric Company was part of Children's Television Workshop, which was part of Sesame Street. I also got to visit the Muppet Mansion.
Oh,
that's
really
cool.
Was there, and I mean, you've probably heard about it, but there really was a big limestone mansion on the Upper East Side that was filled with Muppet workshops and filled with Muppets.
wow.
And it was
so
like
cool.
a lot of fun. So I enjoyed that project maybe more than any of the others that are more in the Marvel canon.
Yeah.
But
Now Brian says I have a couple color guides from Spidey Super Stories, fun books.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Jeannie, that has come in value so much than it was prior 20 years ago. Spidey Super Stories is definitely a collectible magazine, and that the hardcover they made too, right, Steve? Remember they made the best of Spidey Super Stories they made like in the 70s, the mid 70s there. That's a tough one to get. And if you can get that in hardcover, that's a lot of money. I think it has like the first 5 stories or something of John Romita Spidey. So I mean, you're a hot commodity. So, but Jeannie, I want to ask, was that the first project that you got given to you?
No. Let's see. I did some romance comics. Those were kind of the entry level for any young woman. Romance. I think a couple of other people did westerns as an entry level, but I did romance comics. And then Night Nurse. Night Nurse, which in its first incarnation, regrettably only ran a few issues because it was neither fish nor fowl. It wasn't strictly romance. There were no superheroes. It wasn't quite enough action adventure. I mean, to tell you the truth, if I had something in my mind, I had sort of an action-packed General Hospital in mind, which was on TV at that time. But evidently now, over the years, any number of young women have worn the mantle of the night nurse. That night nurse has evolved and ended up treating superheroes. Now, way back when, had those 3 women's comics, A Night Nurse, Shadow the She-Devil, and Claws of the Cat, integrated more into the pantheon of Marvel characters, had they interacted more with the regular characters, I think they would have done better. But they were really siloed into their own freestanding comics, and they didn't interact with any of the other characters.
It's funny with the cat, like while you were getting Night Nurse, Linda Fight was getting the cat, right? Didn't she have so they were giving her a little piece of that because she's a co-creator of the cat. And so you become a co-creator of Night Nurse. Now, did you ever think, look at when you're writing those first issues, she's a big deal on those Doctor Strange movies. I mean, like if you look at those, I don't know if you look at those.
It's one of the night nurses. It's one of the nurses. And it's one of the nurses who was kind of a roommate, and then somehow they've made her a doctor. So somewhere in the era between the Night Nurse comic, one of the characters must have gone to medical school because she ends up as a colleague of Stephen Strange, colleague and love interest of Stephen Strange.
You get your credit in there. Your name is in those movies right there.
Yes.
Night Nurse. You can't listen. That's forever, Jeannie. I mean, they can't take that away from you. That's incredible if you really think about that. And then you also get credited. Now you're also a co-creator. Tell us how Roy and you come up with a little Werewolf by Night. That's a little, I mean, Marvel Spotlight.
This is the most bizarre thing. This is completely a bizarre situation. But Roy and I had gone to the auto show, the annual spring auto show, because a friend of mine was a car model. And we had looked at just enough cars after a couple hours and were bored. And so we just retreated to some place to sit down. And I think he had this thing to do, this story to come up with. And so we plotted it together because I was a big fan of horror movies. I loved those when I was a kid. I loved the old Wolfman movies and Dracula and all that. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but literally, I mean, I honestly think we were sitting on a wall outside the Coliseum, the New York Coliseum, with the auto show going on and doing this.
Oh, magic.
So, and who knew that just trying to kill a few hours in the afternoon would develop into this character that's existed for 40 years, 50 years. Amazing.
Oh,
I also have a Werewolf by Night t-shirt, but I prefer the Spidey.
And you're credited on Werewolf by Night too, like the special that they just did. I was so happy that they did. I mean, like, once again, when you're doing this back then, you don't understand, like, you just never know, like, the power of these characters and stuff, that they changed the world. And, like, you're kind of like, yeah, we just kind of did this, but I mean, like, you never know what happens. And you guys at Marvel, you just were in the Zagat. It was just literally the nucleus of all this creativity, and now it's expanded today, where you would have never have thought 50 years later people are more crazy about this stuff than ever. And
it resurrected me. I don't know if anybody ever gave me a thought. If they did, they probably thought I was no longer on this earth and you would have to contact me with a Ouija board. So,
well, that's what I've been trying to
just doing good in Manhattan.
Right, but that's what I've been trying to do. And once again, they'll always remember you for these characters. I mean, I know you've done a lot of stuff outside of comics and you've done a lot of great stuff. I know that, Jeannie. But like, those characters are forever, and it's like I said, and they're never going to go away, and you happen to be part of that at the right time. So before I give it to Steve, I have to say this. I have to ask, did anybody ever look at Stan's vouchers? Like, did everyone take a little peek at those?
I don't think anybody got a hold of them.
Oh, because
I think that's where the confidentiality came in.
Oh.
I mean, I think his were directly given to either Saul Brodsky or somebody directly in magazine management accounting.
So his kind of bypass, and everybody else is kind of filtered through, but Stan's what's
but
he was the editor.
Even the ordinary vouchers were not passed around. I mean, they were also channeled appropriately to either Saul to sign off that the work was done, and then directly to accounting.
I would love to get my hand on one of those vouchers. Imagine one of Stan's vouchers or Roy's vouchers. Like that would be so cool. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Gene, maybe you don't know this because I want to talk about an aspect that you probably haven't given any thought of, but the collectability of Night Nurse. Many, many years ago, I was dealing with a collector, very wealthy. He had runs of original Golden Age books. Nothing was beyond him. He could get anything he wanted. And he was on a phone call with me, and he said, Steve, he goes, I'm looking for Night Nurse. And I was stunned, and I was like, well, wait a minute. You've got Captain America 1 and Marvel Comics. And he goes, Steve, I can't find that damn book in a certain grade. And so I spent 6 months because he was going to give me a bonus if I could find him a certain grade. And I was going through shows, I was trying to find it, and it did not exist in a certain grade because, obviously people, as you said, it didn't really fit at the time because no one knew really what it was. So it was put over in like a romance section or put in a discount box underneath, and all the copies got crunched and messed up. And he wanted a nice, clean copy. So there was this huge, powerful man, CEO of this massive company, and he was like, I need Night Nurse. Yeah, I need Night Nurse. Now, the funny thing is he had issue 1, but he couldn't, the 2, 3, and 4, he didn't. He just could not get in the grade. So, that little creation that you came up with turned out to be, and it's a beast of a book to get in a certain condition. And I've only seen a couple in my lifetime, which are truly high grades. And when I do, that deep, dark red of issue 1 is a thing of glory.
It is. It really popped.
Yes. And also what I find funny is the other issue that you're famous for, which is, the Werewolf by Night #2 is another deep, dark red cover, which, is actually even harder to get in condition because of its square bound.
Yeah.
Now, of course, at the time, there had been a little bit of a relaxing of the code, and Marvel were allowed to do werewolves again.
Yeah.
Because obviously they went through that period where, there was no werewolves, the comics code were brutally harsh. And then all of a sudden, here they are, and then there's you sitting on this little wall out there thinking, okay, we're going to bring werewolves back into the Marvel Universe, and it turned out to be far more successful than people thought. I mean, the Werewolf series basically outlasted all the nearly, except for Tomb of Dracula. It went all the way up to 1977, whereas Tomb of Dracula went to 1979. But yeah, your kibitzing right there with Roy brought about a character that actually had a long, long history, and of course, with the TV series and stuff like that. So you're right. When you can sit there and you can look and go, yeah, your name's going to be basically living forever.
Yeah, and Gene, we got to talk about this one. I don't know if people out there know, but Conan 31, you were the ghost plotter on that, and Roy forgot to put her name in that, and he had. Yes, look, I know. This is a great thing. I know you were upset. That's why I'm bringing it up, and I want you to say the story, Jeannie. But Roy forgot, and he makes up for it by putting in like an issue, a few issues later, and mentions it. But it's never the same. And no, because everybody takes the issue. Tell us the tale of Conan 31.
Well, this is the one where he fights his shadow.
Yes.
Yes. And I came up with that. Like, what would be a foe that just keeps growing and you can't defeat and you can't put your hands on? I said, oh, he fights his shadow. And we plotted that in a taxi on the way to a post office. I mean, we didn't sit around a kitchen table and rattle off ideas. I mean, a lot of this was in passing. It's like so many of the people of that era had to do exactly that. Make a midnight ride to the Central Post Office to get their stuff in the mail and postmarked so it didn't look like they were late.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So often I went in the cab ride with him, and that's when we started talking about stories. And yes, so
okay. So I want to go back to that, but when the issue comes out and you look at it, tell me what you did. Because Roy pisses me off too sometimes when he does something. Like if I'll be like, Roy, you forgot to. Oh yeah. Like, sometimes he gets absent-minded like that. He doesn't mean it, but it drives me nuts sometimes. So I can imagine you opening up that comic and being like, hey, wait a second. But go ahead. Tell me that.
Well, he won an award for that. He won an award for that story. Okay. I don't want to open old cans.
No, you have to say it though. This is good.
I could have been thanked at that point, and I wasn't.
Oh, he didn't thank you either? Believe me, this is no surprise because Roy gets absent-minded with that stuff. Okay, so what happened? Come on, Jeannie, let it
What do you
out.
mean
This
what
is
happened? I got mad. What do you
It is her ex-husband now.
I mean, you get the idea. Do you get the idea here?
Okay, so then you must have grabbed Roy and said, I need to know because
I don't even remember what I said, but you get the idea that somewhere along the line, there was a need. I felt a need to differentiate myself and go into a different line of work where I was not in the shadow.
right. But I will tell you this, Jeannie. When he told me that story, he told me how bad he felt, though. But and you know Roy sometimes too. He can be. It's like he's almost unempathetic, and I know it's like, and he can sometimes. It looks like that, but then he feels bad about it. But sometimes he doesn't show it as much. But what he told me about that, he did feel really bad about that, and he said he still feels guilty that he had to do it. But that's why it was surprising to me. And he always does mention that, though. He'll always say like, "Oh no, Jeannie does." You know, Roy. He's always about that credit thing, and he'll always give credit where credit's due. So he does mention, but he did. Yeah, he did. He did tell it. So that's
okay, here's the question. When they reprinted that story in the omnibuses, did they correct the credit?
I don't think so.
You know, I was so off into a whole other world. I never looked back. I never picked up comics off the newsstand. I was not going to get myself all agitated about this. I had a whole other career.
Right.
And
But there was something you said when you went into like the cab and drove and talked stories, something about New York. I mean, especially at that time, I mean, there was just a pulse of creativity going on there, whether it be movies, whether it be comics or magazines, something about the city of New York, which is lost on people today. And
Yes.
It's not the same, but it's something like you said, like you guys are just sitting there on the wall, or you guys are taking a cab ride, and you like other writers and artists did the same.
yeah,
And there was something about being in New York and that creativity. And when you were saying that, I just kind of thought about it because, you know, you watch those movies from the 70s and all that stuff, and, you know, they're because cabs and just everything's happening.
yeah.
It doesn't surprise me how ideas got generated by looking at the wall or the building or this.
Yes.
You know, we were talking about Jerry Conway last about the death of Gwen Stacy and about like the whole New York thing, because Spider-Man is all about New York, you know? And so like, but there was something powerful about those streets and those walls, especially at that time.
And don't forget, being in New York, I mean, we had access to non-comics related creative things.
Right.
New School, MoMA was doing a lot of old film retrospectives, and definitely New School resurrected a whole class on old horror movies. And one phrase that I will always remember from that is, "Where does safety lie?" And that has been drilled into my mind. But another phrase that has been drilled into my mind, and that I have continued to use it well into my decade. Okay, was something from Spider-Man. And here I was doing a project at the hospital, and I was sitting in a cubicle with a bunch of young IT people, and they said, "Oh, with this project, we have a lot of responsibility." And I just looked over the partition and I said, "And with great power comes great responsibility." And they're like, "What is that old lady saying that for?"
She's like, is she messing with us?
And I just sunk back down and didn't say anything.
Oh my god! Oh my god! And they have no idea where you're coming from
No,
either.
they have no idea. No,
Like-
no. I mean, a good percentage of my career has no idea
Oh,
what I did in a previous life.
oh my god!
And ironically, okay, now here's the funny thing. Ironically, after some run with entertainment magazines, I decided to get more serious And while my credentials from college, my science, math, pharmacology, all that was still fresh, I went to work as a copy editor for, drum roll please, American Journal of Nursing.
Yeah.
And nobody knew about the other thing. And all they knew is that I was an editor at a magazine and I'd had all these college credits, and that was fine by them. So, and I just always kept it very quiet.
Oh gosh, and that's like crazy. Like if I was like talking and you knew, like talking to a girl, right? And let's say we were talking, and all of a sudden you start telling me like, oh, I had a previous role, and you said like, it would be such a Pandora's box to me. I'd be like, I'd fall in love instantly. I'd be like, what? It would be such a what, like, and you were there during a time where those just the 60s and 70s were the greatest decades for comics ever. I think I'm just saying, and you were there. Go ahead now. Go. It's just such a crazy thing.
I mean, yeah, it's so cool to hear your stories though, and just how much you remember. And a couple things I'm remembering. I mean, you've had some cameos in books.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And
So
I
there's a few
actually did
cameos.
sort of look like that.
Yes. Yeah. And then another thing, I was talking to you before we went live, and just, because I had to verify if I was right or not, but you had the opportunity, working with Electric Company and things like that. Technically, it's not canon, we get it, but you basically created pretty much the first Spider-Woman.
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, this was completely out of the realm of the Spider-Man series. This was an Electric Company character who decided to borrow Spidey's outfit, and she called herself, I called her Spider-Woman.
And there comes a Spider-Woman later in the 70s,
yes,
right?
Yes, but this is completely outside the Spider-Man.
And that, Steve, who was that created by? The one, the Jessica Drew.
Oh,
and from 78.
If I remember correctly, that was Marv Wolfman.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's when like the Hulk started getting on TV, and that's why they wanted to get the copyrights of like a girl Hulk, a girl Spider-Man, and then they really started pushing that. I remember in all the cereal boxes, Spider-Woman was a big deal. Did you ever look at? You probably were totally out of it, but if you ever saw that Spider-Woman, did you think back to when you saw that like, hey, wait a second, I did that first? Never?
Maybe not that. I mean, actually, the thing that kind of breaks my heart a little is the way that Night Nurse evolved so much. And I was completely left out of that.
Yeah.
There was no way,
Yeah.
and I wasn't aware of some of the original evolution of it, but I would have loved the Night Nurse treating the superheroes. And I just think that was so cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we do here, though, Jeannie. I mean, like, we love to celebrate people like you, and sometimes that people are forgotten. Hey, remember when I started with Roy back in 2015? A lot of people knew the characters and they knew Roy Thomas, but they didn't know sometimes they were one the same, and that went for a lot of creators. Now it's all serious business and stuff, but this is what we enjoy doing. I love to celebrate creators regardless how big or how small, because you made a contribution.
That heartened me when I saw it on your blurb, creators great and small, because I see myself as a little asteroid circling the Marvel universe.
But you have that asteroid. That's your piece. And that's something you're going to have to remember. Nobody else. Those Spider Super Stories are going to sell forever. Steve, am I correct?
Yes, they are. And they're only going to get more collectible.
Yes. And that is you got there before Sauerkraut. Sal, you got there well before him.
Yeah, and he took it over after me. Yeah.
Yes. And even he was a little like, those things are so, people want all that stuff, and it changed the world. So you have a piece of that. Night Nurse forever. Werewolf by Night forever. You were part of that bullpen forever. I mean, like, you're going to be there. So, yeah, I'm just saying, don't ever forget that. So go ahead, Steve.
You know, I want to get to perhaps one of the more controversial aspects of this show. I don't know whether you're aware of it, but there's a movement within the industry right now, which says that, you know, Stan didn't really do anything and that he was just in his office. So Robin brought some good information to light, and I'm going to ask you the same question.
Okay.
Can you
I
confirm
saw
that Stan
Robin's
actually
interview.
did actually write and get stuff done?
I saw Robin's interview. Okay. And that triggered something in my mind. That's okay. Like, I don't want to be doxxed. I don't want to be trolled online. But I got to say, that's not the craziest conspiracy theory in the world. That is not the craziest conspiracy theory in the world. Because by the time I was working with Stan, and I was in the office, like, literally every day for a couple years, and then off and on for even more. I mean, he entertained people in his office. He acted out stories in his office. But I have to say, I don't think I ever saw him touch a typewriter. That's what us gals were for. I mean, not that we typed his dictated scripts. I mean, he just didn't write in the office. So if you're asking an eyewitness, did I see him write? No, he wrote at home.
Okay.
So I don't know. Compare. I mean, if somebody can get a hold of old manuscripts and like compare the typefaces or whatever.
And that's where
gradually, year after year, I think he used that office, that beautiful, well-appointed, comfortable office, more as a place to meet and greet, do deals, maybe talk one-on-one with each artist or writer, but it didn't seem like there was a lot of the traditional script work coming out of the office. I mean, that was done at home.
Yeah. That's what Roy was doing too, right? Roy was
Yes.
always writing at home.
Yes.
Good stuff.
Although I can be an eyewitness to the fact that he was writing at home.
Yeah. But
Mainly at midnight, but be that as it may.
Well, it would make sense though, right? Because I mean, he's running this company. He's a
Yes.
very animated man. He wants things a certain way. You know, there's stories of him, you know, on chairs and tables and acting things out. I mean,
Yes.
with all those titles going on, it would make sense. I know in my career, you know, I do a lot of things at home because in the office, it's just not feasible. I'm interrupted too much. I have to do things outside of that.
And I'm just saying that this particular theory isn't the wackiest one. It isn't the most far-fetched you could come up with, because probably a lot of people didn't see him actually writing in the office, because he didn't. He wrote at home. The office was a stage.
Who did he turn his scripts into?
I don't think anybody. Wasn't he the editor?
Yeah,
he was the editor.
So I guess he
So
sent
has
them
no
on
one
to
ever
Jack
seen a
Kirby.
script?
I guess he sent them on to Jack Kirby or John Romita or whoever.
Yeah.
Well, he would have to give them to the traffic manager, which was Saul, right?
Yes.
So,
And then after that, it was John Verputten.
yeah, for Putton.
Yes.
We're gonna have to
And
make
then-
an investigative
and
series.
It's funny with John and Stu the Stat. I call him Stu the Stat Man. He actually has a name, Stu Schwartzman. Stu Schwartzberg. But I think they might have been classmates at School of Visual Arts.
Mm-hmm.
So they did a lot of like the commercial art production as well as some creative work. But I mean, you needed that too. You needed somebody to sit at a drawing board with a T-square and an X-Acto knife and Letraset and Snowpake and fixing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You needed somebody with those skills, those commercial arts skills. It couldn't all be just creatives sitting around waiting for the muse to strike.
Yeah.
Right, and this was all. So who do you remember? Who was it? Herb Trimpe that was working at the desk. Like there was the desk there.
Herb was there. John Romita was at a drawing board there for a long time, and I think he did Spider-Man. But I also think he did some of the updating of some of the romance stuff.
Yes,
the girls.
Yes.
And then there was another guy. Tony Mortallero,
Yes.
and he did a lot of like the routine, I don't know, fill-in inking, but he also did a lot of like the updating and drawing girls. Modernizing girls.
I want to ask you this though, Jeannie. Who was a talent there that impressed you though? Like I know you weren't into the comics or anything, but was there somebody that did some art or did some writing that was very highly impressive of you? Like that impressed you?
Of course, as with many women, obviously Marie Severin was the most impressive to me.
Ooh.
I mean, here she was, a full-fledged artist, not an assistant, not a production assistant, a full-fledged artist in what was at that point almost exclusively a men's domain.
Yeah.
And she held her own, and she at the same time was wildly humorous, good-natured, fun to be around, didn't seem to have axes to grind. And like I just keep going back to, and firmly stood her ground.
Yes.
Now, one funny story about the ladies of that generation. There was Marie, then she was friends with someone, a couple ladies in circulation and accounting in magazine management, which was the parent company. And they would invite me out to their ladies' lunches. Well, you would think like this was a genteel thing. We did go to genteel places, Schraff's, the Women's Exchange, L'Orangerie, but the drinks were so strong. They were so strong. And not just the four I went to lunch with, but this place was full of ladies of a certain age with hats and white gloves, slamming back Manhattans, martinis. I'll have a gin. I'll have Beefeater gin, someone would say. I mean, they knew their drinks.
Oh my God.
And then go back to work.
And go back. But that was the culture throughout the publishing industry, and probably a lot of others. And where the women pretty much went to these more genteel places, the male half of the company, and with some of their pals from magazine management, frequented the Coral Bar. Mm-hmm. And it was a place, I think, on 58th Street or something. And I mean, they came back pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty three sheets to the wind.
I was wondering, Jeannie, did you ever meet Martin Goodwin? Did you ever see him?
Yes. I mean, I do remember a much older gentleman. And at that point, I think his son Chip was taking over more of the business end. And yes, I did meet Chip. And strangely enough, this just goes to show what a small world New York is in general. Years later, I was applying for a job in fundraising, and it was through a Jewish agency. And someone saw on my resume, I guess instead of Marvel Comics, I think I had put magazine management on there, just because at that point it was wiser to downplay the comics aspect. Right. Well, this woman saw it and said, "Oh, do you know Chip Goodman?" And I said, "Yes, I used to work for him." And she said, "You're hired."
Nice.
completely, years later, had nothing to do with comics. It just goes to show what a small world it was.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's the stuff me and Steve love. Like, it's those nuggets right there of just, And I know they don't, they're fun for you, but they mean everything because it places this story of just this lore. And you got to understand, Jeannie, people love. I want to know what was in the cracks of like the wood and the walls. Like it's just like it was just such a. It's just.
I wouldn't even want to know. I wouldn't want to know. I mean, maybe it was rubber cement, but on the other hand, use gloves.
And really quick, when you're talking about Marie Severin, she drew that beautiful picture, like the cutest. I thought she was, what a caricature artist she was. It was amazing. She was a great regular artist, but I think her biggest strength was the caricatures and the way that she drew you and Roy in that Spoof #1 as little kids. The little Jeannie and the little Roy is absolutely one of the most on the first page. I recommend anybody see that Spoof #1 from 1971, and she draws little Roy Thomas and little Jeannie Thomas at the top of the stairways and all that. So adorable. Unbelievable. It's one of my favorite pictures that she ever did in that panel.
It's a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
It's really sweet.
Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny. I met Marie many, many years later because when I was in England, I didn't really have a lot to read. I only had one annual, which was a British hardcover annual, reprinting the Hulk Annual 1, which she drew, like 48 pages. And that's the annual with the Inhumans. It's a big story. Yeah. And I read it nonstop for years because it's the only thing I had. So when I met her in San Diego, she was, just sitting there quietly at this little desk. And I was like, Marie Severin? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, I had a Marvel Masterwork with that book, with that reprinting. And I said, you're responsible for making me who I am today. I read this book so many times, and she was like so happy. And then she just grabbed the book off me and she drew this little picture, drew a little picture of herself and, and then signed it, whatever it is. But yeah, she was definitely a trailblazer. And whenever they needed a caricature of any character or any person that was real, she was brought in to do it, of course, because she was but yes, definitely a trailblazer. And again, there were certain things going on in the world of comics in that time where you're right there at the cutting edge where things are beginning to change. And the old stodgy ways that, that had been there for a long time, they were beginning to, creak a little bit. And people were saying, well, why didn't we try this? And why didn't we try that? And hence, you get those three comics. You get the, the Cat, Shauna, and Night Nurse, And of course, I do agree with you. I think it was a lost opportunity because with Shauna, they put Shauna in Daredevil immediately, right afterwards.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Shauna appears there in the stories with the Mandrill, actually in the Daredevil comic. Yeah. And Night Nurse, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything with it that way. So I can understand how you would be frustrated with that.
But Jeannie, isn't it funny? Night Nurse became more popular than Shauna because she actually got the recognition in the movies. Yeah. Like I'm just saying, just see how funny how that all works out. And even the Cat, Cat never made it into the Marvel universe. Has that come into the Marvel universe yet? Steve?
No, but I'm sure at some point Hellcat will come in.
Yes, yeah. But I'm just saying, you think about that. Maybe Night Nurse wasn't the most popular of the three, but she's the one that comes into the movies, and you get the credit.
Well, her character makes more sense. The nurse for superheroes. I mean, in the Daredevil series.
Oh, big time.
Rosario Dawson.
Are you telling me that a lady can't run through the jungle in a tiny, small leopard skin suit?
not in today's day and age. Not today's day and age.
All right, Jeannie. I know it's getting late, but we have to talk about your little National Lampoon stuff. Come on, Jeannie. You had some great photos there. Steve will sometimes post those things up. Roy Thomas, what are you doing? It's great stuff. Tell us about the free love on the free love highway. Come on, what was going on then with those pictures of you? What shirt you were wearing? Was it the Captain Marvel shirt? Like you had like you had like.
Oh no! Well, one of them was a National Lampoon Mona Gorilla shirt.
That was one of them.
Yes.
There's another one you're wearing. I think you're wearing the Captain Marvel 1966 shirt. I think that's one.
Because I still have that one, strangely enough. I still have that. It's a raggedy old shirt, And I wore it to a couple comic book conventions, and
Really?
people actually stopped and took pictures of me. Like, what is that?
And you still have some of those 60s Marvel shirts, those T-shirts, right?
I only have the one of Captain Marvel. I have no idea
Yeah,
what happened to
okay.
so much.
But that,
else.
but okay, so you did one with, okay, was it with Steve Englehart too? Was it?
Yes, and yes, because there was that kind of panel art form then with photos called fumetti.
Yes.
And you broke a page down panel by panel, but with a running joke, and it was all illustrated with photos. So yes, indeed. So yes, I was the long-haired, wide-eyed, innocent beauty in a Mona Gorilla T-shirt, and then at one point, at one point, the idea was I was not supposed to have a T-shirt, but I had my hair over it. I remember saying fastest hair in the West because my hair was very long.
To anybody out there that doesn't know what we're talking about, they were like these fun, provocative, but used with humor pictures of, Roy was in there, Steve Englehart. Who was the other guy? I know.
Oh, there were people from National Lampoon in there too.
Yeah. There was a National Lampoon. Oh, yeah, Steve Gerber was in one of those too, right?
Yeah. Yes, Steve Gerber.
Hey, Jeannie, you are still, and you were a hot ticket then. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, there's no denying. And the fact that, plus it was the time too. I mean, it was, but back then it was done with like artistic more. Today, you don't get that. It's all gratuitous.
With good humor. It was all done with good humor.
Yeah, but there was also like an artistic edge to it. It wasn't like gratuitous. It was sexy. It was sassy, but it had class. You could tell it was more for fun and all that stuff. I'm just saying you don't get that today because everything is so, it's straight provocative. It's straight it's just straight gratuitous, and it's just like it just showed you guys were all having fun, and it was great to see the artists and the creators that were also having fun like that. Hey, Stan did it too. Remember Stan's naked picture with the treasury in front of him? Laying on the couch.
Oh, yes.
Look it up, Niall. Look it up. Stand on the couch.
I'm trying to find any of this National Lampoon stuff. I can't find any of this.
Oh my God! Would you mind if? Wait.
Well, didn't some of that stuff appear in Foom?
Excuse me.
Didn't some of that stuff appear in Foom?
It might have appeared. Yeah, it might.
And also, there was also some appearances in Crazy Magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Jeannie's, she had the National Lampoon. There was some in the Crazy. There was the great, but Jeannie, those were great photos. I mean, come on, let's go. You had it going on. Nothing to be ashamed of. You were the Goldie Hawn of Marvel Comics. That's what it was. That's what I always told Roy when I saw all those stuff. I was like, it was Goldie. You remind me of Goldie Hawn from what was that game show that she did? Like it was that. It was
Laughing.
Laughing, and she had like the fake tattoos, like just the art all around. That's what it reminded me. It was just like that. So I mean, it was good. And look at Englehart. Look at now he doesn't even have any hair. He had the long hair and all that stuff. Oh yes.
Oh.
Even Stan. So you
Batman versus Hulk.
This is something you can't unsee.
It was the 70s, man. Free love on the free love highway. Okay, Niall, any last words for Mrs. Thomas?
I just want to thank you for coming on. It's so great hearing the stories and the insides, of the industry then. So it's really an honor to talk to you. And I've been a Werewolf by Night fan for a very long time. So thank you for that.
And I would also like to say, it's been fantastic. I love hearing these firsthand accounts of people who were there at the same time and able to, corroborate certain information and add some new information. And yes, I will admit, even to this day, you are a very attractive lady. So I really appreciate it that you came on. I know that, you're not really out there a lot doing stuff like this, but believe you me, as this show goes on and on and on, people are going to, be able to recognize certain nuggets, certain, interviews and go, oh my word. And they're going to go back and use this as reference material. So I really appreciate you coming on and taking part in the podcast.
Yeah, and Jeannie, before you go, but I'd like you to tell the story because I know it was a kind of weird part there, like how it ended at Marvel. I remember I remember Roy telling me the story, but I'd like you to tell me the story about like how it ended. I know it was kind of like it was kind of like weird, kind of a weird thing.
Well, I mean, the one version fit for public consumption is I had finished my college degree. I graduated Phi Beta Kappa summa cum laude, and had done teaching in Hell's Kitchen. So that suited me for doing the Spidey Super Stories. But I wanted to go off and do other things. I did magazines, I did professional journals, and then ended up working for nonprofits and medical centers. So I don't, but I don't think there was any one specific just I'm out of here, slam the door.
Right.
I mean, I wanted to do other things.
Yeah, moved on. Yeah.
I mean, did I choose the wrong horse in life? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, should I have pursued comics? I don't know. But I really liked what I did.
Right.
I really liked what I did with the magazines. I really liked what I did with the professional journals. I really enjoyed my work with patient education and community work with healthcare.
Yeah.
And that had always been a dream of mine, to go on one of the medical missions when I finally retired. I really wanted to do that, and then who knew that?
It's funny, Jeannie, like you save lives, you do these big things, but people just want to know the comic books. It's like, it's so funny. It's like, but I did this, and it's like, yeah, but tell me about Stan Lee. Like, tell me about Night Nurse.
I know. Nobody cares that I brought children over from Ukraine to have life-saving surgery.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, yeah, but what did you do about Spidey Super Stories?
No, right. and that's once again, but that's why we're here, is to celebrate you. And Jeannie, I mean, it's so easy to see that you're such a wonderful, you have a great heart. It doesn't surprise, like you I mean, you just exude loveliness and all that stuff. That, I mean, doing the things that you've done, it's like there's no substitute like doing those things. But your stories too have inspired people too. Like, those things are forever too. So even you, like, helping in the medical field and doing all those great things, those comics still did things too that like inspired people. And no matter what, I remember reading those Spider-Man Super Stories. I have that hardcover Spidey of those issues and all that stuff. I remember that. I the number one, but I read those too. And once again, when my daughter was young too, I gave her those Spidey Super Stories.
Yeah, they'd be perfect for a young girl. Yes.
Oh, it was perfect. But once again, now the old collector market will, you'll have your fingerprint in the medical community, but you'll always have your fingerprint on the comic business. And that's something that, it's funny. Linda has it too, and Robin has it to an extent because she did that article in Rolling Stone. But you are the one that really has it a little bit more than them, because like I said, the Night Nurse, the Spidey Super Story, those are, in the Werewolf by Night, those are big commodities now. I mean, like, it's there's Hot Wheel cars of Werewolf by Night and all that stuff. I mean, it's just game pieces. It's not going anywhere. So I thank you for that. I love that, and I love that you come here and we celebrate. You let us celebrate you, because that's what we want to do. We celebrate your life and your legacy, because no matter what, you have a huge legacy, whether it's in the metal field or it's comics. You have that.
Well, John, can I say I will promise not to be a stranger?
Good. And so, we would love to have you back. That's what I want. I want you back on. And just so you know, I've told Jeannie this. I like to go public with it. I would like to get Jeannie at some shows to obviously get the old team, because I'm trying to put Jerry together. I'm trying to get Jerry and Roy together, get that old club back together, and then it would be great to get Jeannie in there. And I'm just saying, it's a great. You guys, there's a lot of Marvel there.
Yeah. Oh, you were gonna say something nice about the upcoming comic book signing.
Okay, yes, that's right. Of course, one of the last things, CGC is doing a signing with Jean, and they're doing their first signing and stuff. We got her out, and like once again, hopefully we do well, but we could probably start doing it every year. And as you get more out there, we hope to get more and more comics, and more. It's awareness, because once again, it's a lot of people may know you. But they don't know that you also have this connection to Night Nurse or Spidey,
Well,
and
this will be interesting. It will be interesting to see if I end up there spending all day signing, or if I sit there spinning spider webs. I have to be ready for either case.
No, but the key is, though, we're getting you out there, and listen. Roy increased every year too, so I'm just saying it's always and I made it every year and all that stuff. You got to remember, Roy wasn't in 2014, 2015 when I got Roy. Roy was a guy that was kind of in the corner there. He wasn't getting the respect he deserved and all that stuff, and we had to build him up. See, so I mean, it happened. So it even happened to him, and now his stuff. So I mean. You're just fresh there, and it's just gaining awareness, and that's what this is about. This is what me, Steve, and Niall do, and just want to celebrate you and the legends, and we love you. So any last words, Miss Thomas?
Well, thank you for having me on here.
She's like a rose, a little button.
Thank you for finally talking me into it and being patient and letting me decide to do this.
Yes.
Because I was very nervous.
Yeah.
I don't mind telling you, I was very nervous. Every time I do one of these things, I'm very, very nervous.
Steve, does she look like she's nervous?
Well, you may have started off a little bit nervous at the start, but after about 10 minutes, you were ready to rock and roll. So you realize that there's no pressure here, there's no drama. It's just some fans that adore you, and so you're able to get your own story out, and this interview here will live forever, and it's a document of your time at Marvel.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jeannie. All right, Steve, get us out of here.
Boom.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button, and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at ThePopXP, and over on Instagram at ThePopXP. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you soon.